Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Show for July the 4th. Happy 4th of July to you this weekend on KMED. And man, I'm telling you, what's a hot weekend. That's for sure. Hope you're going to stay cool. You may hear whizzing sounds in the back from us today because even the KMED can't keep up with the air conditioning, can they? It's pretty hot.
Too hot, and the building's cleared out. The air conditioning failed at the end of the week, so yeah, it's hot outside. It's hot inside here.
Well, we hope that your 4th of July weekend, your holiday weekend, is going to be a terrific one, and hope to stay cool and safe. Especially if you go out, because of the sun. I mean, it's a pretty dangerous time if you're not careful. So hope people will do that.
And be safe with all of your celebrations in every way, shape, and form.
Well, on the Real Estate Show, we have guests that come in, once a year. Kind of come. Last week, Glenn Cunningham from Nagel and Padilla was here. We talked about all sorts of things, home offices, 1031 exchanges, all that kind of information that Glenn was so good with. And Kelly Madding, Jackson County Planner, is going to be here next month. And, of course, in November comes Jackson County's assessors. We did tax returns. But today here on the show, we got the sheriff of Jackson County with us, Joe Corey Falls, who's never been on our show before. So, Corey, welcome to the Real Estate Show.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Joe. A pleasure for me to be here today.
The last time, Joe, that I saw the sheriff, he was up in the top of the Child Center at the University of Portland and at the state basketball tournament where his daughter Jasmine plays. And I remember I was telling you, gee, look at there's a sheriff up there. I should go talk to him. And you said, I wouldn't do that because he's pacing the whole time up there. It was not a very good time. We didn't even bother you.
No, that was not a good time. For some reason, my daughter played better when I was a deputy chief. So
they always say elections have consequences, don't they?
Yes, they do, and that was one of them.
I've got to tell you, I'm pleased to have Sheriff Falls here. Feel a little bit old, though, because I broadcast his high school football games when he was a standout running back, all-conference, all-state running back at South Medford High School. Yeah. Now, I broadcast his daughter's outstanding South Medford basketball game.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing the second round come around, Coach. I don't have much time left, I don't think.
Of course, also a member of the Rotary Club of Ashland, and I have fun finding him for his South Medford days, beating Ashland. And, it's one of those things that goes with the territory. But today, the reason the sheriff is here is to talk about what took place, this week. Legal marijuana, real estate, and law enforcement, and what can people expect from this? Because now that it's happened, now that it's here, it's going to be a very interesting dynamic, don't you think? I mean, there's a lot going on right now.
It's a game changer for sure.
So the sheriff's going to give us his views on it, and we can't wait to hear those. Next week here on the Real Estate Show, we got another debut coming. As you know, John L. Scott is our new real estate partner on the show, and next week, Jim Remley, who's the managing principal broker at John L. Scott, will be here. And this guy, knows the market, and I can't wait to share with all of you a lot of his knowledge. It's going to be really terrific next week here on the show.
It's going to be a great addition to the show, and we're also going to hear from the owner of John L. Scott.
Well, anyways,
coming up.
All right, so that's the Real Estate Show here today. Sheriff Corey Falls is with us on the 4th of July. We hope you're having a great day. The Real Estate Show rolls on here on KMED, July the 4th of 2015. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you. And again, wherever you are on this 4th of July, we hope you're having a safe one and great. It's my favorite holiday of the year, really, is the 4th of July. I know people like Christmas, but it was the only time, back when I was growing up, Joe, that my father would allow us to go places, we'd take the day and go out somewhere, and changes, it's kind of cool. I always like
we got some great parades.
Great parades going on today, and tonight the fireworks, the great show. If you have never been to the American Band College's show at Ashland High School at the football field, I go to there. It really is well worth it.
And red, white, those kind of things. Red, white, and boom out at the expo as well.
At the expo
northern end of the valley.
Yeah, when we first got to the Rogue Valley, Ashland had the only 4th of July kind of celebration at that time back in the 80s, and now there's a lot more to it. Anyway, hope you have a good day.
I love the Army commercials that are on right now for Independence Day.
I haven't seen it. Anyway,
the first one and every year since, brought to you by the U.S. Army.
Well, we're with Corey Falls, who's the Jackson County Sheriff today on the Real Estate Show, and Corey's gracious to join us on this very hot day. And Corey was elected back in November of last year, and gosh, almost over 6 months that you now right at 6 months that you've taken office. And well, how's it going? Tell us first of all, kind of how's that been for 6 months? How do you like the job?
It's great. It's the people put me here, of course, and I really appreciate that. So this is what I wanted to do, and glad to be out there serving the community.
Yeah, well, that's good to have it. And this issue, July the 1st, Joe and I have talked about this on our show ever since the voters approved, legal marijuana. And everybody gets fired up about all sorts of different things with real estate. I've gone to classes on this or presentations, and it just like blows you away a little bit about what's happening. And so let me just ask you, first of all, what happened on July the 1st? I mean, just when this thing became legal, I mean, what happened in your opinion?
Well, the only thing that stood out to me about yesterday was there was people on the side of Highway 99 handing marijuana out for free.
Yeah,
that's different.
That was different, and we certainly got some calls about that, and that was new. The only thing I wanted to make sure with that case is make sure we weren't giving it to any kids or anything like that. But that was the biggest thing that stood out to me yesterday.
I'm sure that you talk with people like Sheriff George there in the city of Medford and other law enforcement people in the valley about this. I mean, it's everywhere now. What is the kind of general consensus of what's going to happen?
How is law enforcement prepared?
How are you going to deal with whatever happens?
Well, I think it's going to be new for everybody, new for law enforcement, the realtors, our community, of course. And my take right now is let's monitor it and see what happens. And what I think personally, I think we're going to start seeing probably some more nuisance calls, just as people are learning what the laws are. It's still unlawful to do in public, but I would imagine that if people don't know the law yet, they might feel free to do this. And some of our parks are places open to the public, and they can't. So we might get some calls on that. Certainly with what you guys do in the real estate world, that opens up a whole new door of people concerned about their neighbors or whatever. So that's the thing I want to see is what type of nuisance calls we start getting.
Have you talked with other law enforcement from other states like Washington or Colorado or places like that are a little bit ahead of us here of what changed? I know each state is different, and our law is very different, as you know, from the other two. In one very big way, as you know, is that Oregon's law allows an individual to grow 4 plants on your property. Well, that comes back to private property rights issues and all sorts of other things you can get into with that. So do you talk to other law enforcement outside of here? And what are they telling you that took place when those states had ended up with legal marijuana? I know in a different way.
Sure. And I haven't specifically spoken with anybody, but I know we've sent some people to different trainings and tried to pay attention to what some of the other states are seeing. Yeah, the difference with our law where individual people can grow it, the things that we are concerned about is with the equipment that is set up to grow in the house and make sure people aren't rewiring things and doing some of those things that maybe get into the permit process. Because
they do a lot of damage to properties that we find out if it's not done right? I mean, that's what we found we've heard in the past. Okay, yeah. They steal it. You can steal try to steal electricity. They steal water.
Yep.
They vent into attics, and you know what happens? The mold just multiplies,
sure.
and so you ruin the house.
And then
the house
have the very sophisticated ones that do such infrastructure rewiring and things like that. It is permit required.
Now we had Laurel Adams, who was our All Cities property management expert with us, Corey, and she had a client who she said rented to people, lease ended. Said goodbye to the tenants and rented it to some people who wanted to grow marijuana at 5 times the rental price of what she was getting, what they were getting for the house. But that's in a neighborhood, and this is the thing that concerns me with all of this. That I think that eventually you and law enforcement are going to have to deal with is that type of situation that a residence has been turned into a grow house.
Yeah, we're going to have to monitor this. It's going to affect landlord-tenant rules and agreements, and we'll probably get calls about this. One thing I said as this was coming on all along is let's figure out a way to keep marijuana away from kids, and let's figure out a way to keep it out of neighborhoods. And when we've got that for the past several years anyway in communities of just nuisance calls about deodorant, people having grows in their backyards, those kind of things where you can smell the ventilation of people next door. So if we start seeing a lot of indoor grows based on the change in the law, we might see an increase in nuisance complaint calls.
I think you're going to see that. What did you think, Joe? I mean, I don't know what I just see people coming in here, and even the sheriff. And by the way, we're with Corey Falls, the Jackson County Sheriff, today on the July 4th edition of the Real Estate Show. But you even said, Corey, that you met some people who moved here from Illinois for the reason because
the marijuana business.
Legal marijuana business. People are moving here for that.
The problem is we're all on a bunch of 0.20 and 0.25 acre lots for the most part in our residential neighborhoods, and there is no way to mitigate the effects on your neighbors if you have, say, 4 full plants fully mature. I would guess would put out a pretty good odor. And our city councils in Grants Pass and Medford, and even in the smaller municipalities, are all trying to kind of hammer out where are we going to start?
Okay, but they're doing that.
But, go?
Joe, aren't they doing that ahead of the curve? That's why I like the sheriff's approach of what you said. Let's wait and see what the heck happens here before we start making it. We're going to ban this. You can't do this. You can't do that. You know, I mean, the government. You know, here we go again. So that's my question. It seems to me your part makes more sense of waiting a little bit. Let's see how it plays out. If you don't get any complaints in the sheriff's office, then it's not even an issue, maybe.
Well, we'll see. It's certainly a fluent matter, and it involves so many different parts that I think that's where my stance is. We're going to monitor it because there is the changes or whatever you need for planning or permitting or anything if you're going to rewire your house or do anything to set up a grow. But yeah, I want to monitor what types of nuisance complaints we get and go from there.
Now, I also understand the law that if you are going to be a grower, you have to register, right? You got to register with somebody. Isn't that true?
And OLCC is going to be the overarching agency that oversees this.
See, why wouldn't they register with the sheriff's office? Or why wouldn't they register with the sheriff?
Medical growers do so, I believe.
Register with the sheriff?
Or register with someone.
Well, because the sheriff's not going to...
we want you to get into that business.
Exactly. We're not going to get into that business of monitoring this. I think the originator thought for OLCC is the regulatory authority that oversaw alcohol, and they would put marijuana in that same realm, and they could register with them. But we'll see. That's new also.
Well, I would say you better be careful because the sheriff's offices may just be drawn into this before it's over.
Oh, no.
It's going to have to be somebody's going to, because somebody's going to have to enforce something, and you guys are the only ones who are going to be able to do this.
Well, there's going to be different levels of enforcement, though, because there's going to be code and permitting enforcement issues, I think, that come into this. So everybody's going to have their finger in this to some extent.
It's just so open, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no answer here today, and anything that we're talking about, there is no answer that we have today that could change tomorrow, right?
We've also had agents from Grants Pass that are doing some pretty healthy rural sales, and not to individual owners, LLCs even, that come and are buying up property for the prospect for the future. So there's going to be a business side and the regulations that go along with that as well. And we've seen Washington and Colorado in the banking industry continuing to struggle with that issue of how you account for and deal with that.
Well, so we heard that last week from Glenn Cunningham, and that was amazing.
It's just a list of things we're going to have to work through.
Well, in terms of real estate back again, you cannot, commercial real estate brokers will absolutely throw you out the door or hang up on you if you call them and say, I'm looking for space for a retail marijuana store. I mean, they don't even want to rent to you. I mean, you're seeing in commercial leases now, the landlords are just saying they don't want that in there. That's easy for a commercial landlord to do, right? Because it's your building and you can determine what you want in your building. Take that to a house, though. Take that to a rental, and what happens there? Are you free to do what you want in that rental regarding legal marijuana? Can you put a plant on the rental property, Joe?
And if you're a landlord,
and what is your landlord going to say?
Can you restrict that, given that it's legal in the state of Oregon?
Well, these are the issues of issues, and this is why the sheriff's going to be drawn into this thing no matter what.
Yeah, there's going to be some new landlord-tenant agreements. I think they're probably going to be drafted over the next couple of months, answering a lot of these questions and what we can and cannot do, and especially what a landlord can and cannot do. Because what's going to happen is something's going to a landlord or a tenant is going to call the sheriff's office and say, hey, one or the other is doing this. What are you going to do about it?
And they're going to say, yeah, to you, exactly.
Yes.
Sheriff, to Corey, what are you going to do about this?
Yeah.
And then one of these days, you're going to get one of the commissioners are going to call you and say, Corey, what are you going to do about this? And then, the other kind of thing.
And that's kind of a concern because landlord-tenant, you probably don't have to mitigate a lot of that right now. And that could be a real burden on your staff and on your resources should that become a kind of chronic problem.
It's not something we get into a lot right now. The biggest thing we get into on our civil side with real estate is foreclosures, of course. Actually, there's probably a good thing that the economy's better now because can you imagine if this would have been legal a couple of years ago when we had all these vacant houses everywhere?
Yes.
I think people would have just went in and set up camp for a while in all these vacant homes.
That is a really good point because there were hundreds and hundreds. Well, 6 years ago, Corey, when we started our real estate show, 70% of sales were foreclosed or short sale properties. So you're right; they were all people. Squatters would have went in, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And by the way, I just wanted to tell our listeners. Because, we talk about the foreclosures on homepath.com, which are the Fannie Mae foreclosed properties, that we've said have continued to come up periodically, on a kind of one or two. Just yesterday, this week, I believe it was on Wednesday, there were 14 new foreclosed properties that popped up on homepath.com, and I have never, in the years of monitoring, ever seen that many at one time. I didn't know what that meant. It was kind of odd, but they are still foreclosed properties out there,
and we knew,
and so don't think that there aren't, and that everything is hunky-dory for everybody all over, because it's not still.
We knew there were a bunch that were just lurking in the shadows there, inactive, just sitting, and the banks have kind of waited out the market, and the price points are coming back.
Can I go buy a foreclosure and they'll put a grow into it? And I think that's the questions that I think are being asked in a neighborhood, in a private residence.
Here's what it's interesting though, isn't a lot of those the short sales or the foreclosures that go to auction, aren't some of those just cash only deals where you just go down and you buy it right there on the spot?
Those are all cash only deals. Yes.
So that brings in another interesting thing where especially in the market where banks aren't accepting a lot of this money, you go down and just start going to the auction.
Paying cash for it.
Yeah. Going to the sheriff's sale.
The sheriff's sale. So do you actually go up there and do that, by the way? Do you go stand there at the courthouse steps, the sheriff's sales?
No, I don't. I think our civil department might be involved in that to some extent.
And they're still doing them, right? But not very many, you're saying.
We're still doing sheriff's sales, yes.
And do they all sell?
No.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that.
No? Joe's been to them, right?
No, I've got clients that have been to 3 in a row, and nothing came to fruition. Nothing really came out.
Well, over my years of
tough one.
Interviewing sheriffs, from I remember Red Britain back in Klamath days. My God, I mean, that's how far back you go. I always felt that the sheriff's department's always got all the stuff kind of filtered down to them. That eventually the sheriff's department had to handle everything that happened in your county. All these issues, all these things are coming to you. I think there's no other way. There's no other way around it. You're going to see more and more of it, and it'll be interesting to see the concerns.
And it's just a different game for the municipalities and the tightly packed residential neighborhoods, and then the county areas. It's two different fields in the same game here. So,
right.
That's why everybody's working so hard to kind of try to find where they want to start and where they want to start their approach.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see how it plays out, and we have a lot to learn. I think we're only a few days into this thing, and but it's an issue that is certainly not going to go away.
Grants Pass City Council 4 hours and 11 minutes last night, and upwards of an hour and a half of that was testimony on their marijuana ordinance, and the place packed with citizens.
And what did they say? What was the thing with something like that? I mean, you've been to some of these.
I haven't sorted through that. I was just transferring the file today, but just saw by the length of the meeting and knew that was the topic. And then I wrote to the secretary up there. She said, one after the other, citizens were very concerned about the crafting of that ordinance and the impact and what their rights were going to be on the other side of it. So, yeah.
Well, we're with Corey Falls here, the sheriff of Jackson County, on the Real Estate Show. We got a break coming up. Next, we're going to ask you about what about public lands and people growing marijuana on public lands and what role the sheriff has to play in that. Go get those guys anyway. We want them out of our public land. The Real Estate Show, of course, you can watch our shows at realestateshoworegon.com. We are coming right back after this here on the 4th of July show. Hope you stay cool and have a great week. Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KMED, July the 4th of 2015. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys here, and hope you're having a great 4th of July. Today, a lot of activities going on, a weekend, a lot of people. Well, when it gets 110 degrees around here, where do people go? They go to the coast, right, where it's like 50, or you go up to Lake of the Woods or something.
Yep.
But even Lake of the Woods would be hot today, this weekend, I think.
Yep.
The coast.
The mid-90s up there is pretty hot.
Doesn't 55 in fog sound great? Yeah. Let's go to the coast, go to Brookings or something for that. Anyway, welcome to our real estate show today. Next week here on the show, Jim Remley from John L. Scott Real Estate will make his first appearance with us. We hope you'll join us for that next week. And there's just lots of stuff going on here in the middle of summer now. The real estate market really rolling along. There's still a lot of activity going on, Joe. A lot of, although I did say I had, I was waiting 2 weeks to get a house inspection on a property that I was selling because the inspectors were just so busy. And they had a two week wait.
Wow.
Well, that's caught up to them now. So it's not quite as long.
But that's
so it's
right
slowed down a little bit. But as the heat comes in, that tends to slow down a little bit as well.
Puts a little pressure on deals because you have 10 business days usually to get those inspections done. So.
Imagine people, agents showing properties this weekend when it's 110 out. Boy, you go. That's a rough day. It's a long day.
Somebody
too.
really wants a house.
Really want a house
this weekend.
This week, no kidding. Sheriff Corey Falls, Jackson County Sheriff, is with us today on the Real Estate Show. We're talking all sorts of things about legal marijuana and law enforcement, real estate, and what that's going to mean as legal marijuana becomes part of our culture now as of this week, and all sorts of issues arise from it. That's for sure. Sheriff Corey, just on a topic, what do you do with your? I see sheriff patrols, all over the place. And you stop people on cars. Just go to the Phoenix exit, and I'm sure I saw 4 sheriff cars there. I swear to God, coming through one time, 2 on each side this week. Anyway, so how does marijuana play into that? Are you training officers, or how are you dealing with your officers to deal with this as well?
So for vehicles that are driving, we've had drug recognition experts for several years in law enforcement, and we have a couple with the county, and there's some in down here in Southern Oregon at different agencies. Mm-hmm. And essentially what they're trying to do is recognize people who are under the influence. Now, if a deputy stops somebody that they think is impaired, they'll just take them through the basic field sobriety test out right there on the streets. Whether they think the impairment is alcohol or drugs, it doesn't matter. It'll be a basic field sobriety test. If they feel somebody is impaired and fails those tests, they'll be taken into custody and brought to the station. If they blow zeros on the breathalyzer, then we'll call in these drug recognition experts to do additional testing to determine not a specific drug, but they'll determine depressants or stimulants or those types of things.
Mm-hmm. So it does come down to you, doesn't it? Again,
yeah, it's a longer process, and we're going to need some more drug recognition experts trained up to do those types of tests, but. Again, we don't know if just because it's legal, if more people are going to drive that way. I mean, I think the people that are using it are already using it. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's another issue in terms of driving. That again, your office is going to have to deal with there. Yeah. What is the biggest concern that you have over this? I mean, I'm sure that I'm sure you have concerns. You're a dad. You're all sorts of things too. Yeah. Driving's one, but we just address that. Okay. It's the nuisance calls and people not understanding the law. I don't want this to affect our public, where people are out in campgrounds and they're out in our parks and are in our public places, and someone's just trying to go to enjoy the afternoon with their family, and someone's smoking marijuana next to them, which would be unlawful, and we have to respond to that. And it's the neighborhoods. And calling in because of the odors and those types of things. It's the nuisance for our citizens in Jackson County that this affects. And if there's the appropriate location and you're doing it lawfully, that's fine. But anywhere outside of that it becomes unlawful or a nuisance, that's what I'm concerned about.
So what you're saying is that really the users need to be responsible for this, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Sure. And hopefully they will. Certainly, over the last several years, smoking, where you used to go into restaurants or anywhere, smoking has really people have not allowed that, and that's been shut out because people just don't want to be around the smoke. You didn't want to go. You go. When I was in college, when I took my wife out to dinner, you'd come home smelling like smoke if you went to the right place, and and people don't want that. And so just in terms of smoking, that has gone away. So hopefully there'll be that same ownership and responsibility for people that are using, and it is done in the privacy of their own home or places that is lawful to do.
Do you see your role as the sheriff or your captains in terms of educating, especially younger people, or what role do you think you're going to play? Because I mean, I look up to you as like you're the lead police law enforcement in the county. So you have a role to play there. What do you think that might be? I
think the role is for our youth. There's mixed messages. Thank you. When it becomes lawful, and just getting out and educating our youth. What all this means, and I think we have a responsibility in law enforcement for that. There's still, to me, there's still a misunderstanding of whether this has medical purposes or not. On the federal level, they say absolutely not.
Right.
And certain states have said it does. I don't have that expertise to say yay or nay. I wish somebody would just come out and make a decision.
I don't think we're going to get one either.
No, I don't think we're going to get one, but our job is to educate.
Yeah, and even the legislature, look how they've dealt with this, and that hasn't. I know it hasn't been easy for them either. And of course, Rob Patridge, who's from Medford, he's the Klamath County District Attorney, is the head of the OLCC, and he's really the one charged with writing the rules, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you talked with him at all? You guys ever?
They had a summit down here in the spring, and Mr. Patridge and some other folks from OLCC that we went to and listened. And it's a fluent, dynamic topic, and there's a lot of information that OLCC is taking. Mr. Patridge is doing a great job. I think he's been all around the state, every county, talking to people about this issue and the best way to respond to it. So I know he's been working and doing his due diligence. So I appreciate that, and that's gonna have to continue.
Boy, you just think about all the different things going on with this, with the dynamics of this, and there's no answer, as we say, there's no answer that's happening, and we're going to have to make our way as we go, and we have to rely on your judgment along the way, because you'll be advising the commissioners and other governments about what's the best route to take here.
Best possible scenario?
What's that?
We just kind of march on like we have been. We've had marijuana users pretty prevalent in our society, but they've been very discreet for the most part.
Well,
we don't want it around children. We don't want it in public, and I think there's a good reason for that. And I think we got a nice committee of citizens who are working with the OLCC and the legislature as well to kind of represent all those voices and all those concerns, and maybe come to a point where we can put this out there, and maybe there are not a lot of problems or things that we can't mitigate or take on.
It may not be as bad as what the doomsayers say. Yeah. I agree with that. I think you're right there. And well, we're going to find out. My big concern is the growing that's going to be taking place, and that is the area that, believe me, there's only so much of this that Oregonians are going to be able to consume, and there's going to be a whole lot of it that's going to be going out of here.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I would say is probably going to be the bigger challenge, maybe, is controlling or at least stopping that. And we're going to have a break here.
One of our goals is to eliminate the black market.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And do you get involved with how much? What's going on in our forest lands? Is that still happening out on public lands where grows are going on? Is it still there?
Cartel
is it still
grows,
going on? Cartel grows and big stuff?
We haven't seen it over the last couple of years. It's something we're going to monitor this year. I hope people aren't drudging around in the woods doing it anymore. It has decreased.
It has decreased.
It has decreased over the last couple of years. So with it being legal now, I don't know why you'd want to be going out in the mountains to doing this.
Well, that's the thing, because you go into Northern California, and they've destroyed many areas of forest land, stealing water, et cetera. But you're saying that they've actually reduced from around here. So I can go into Josephine County and go out in the forest and not necessarily run into that. That's good to hear.
Jackson County, at least.
Okay, Jackson County.
That's a whole different story across the border.
A different sheriff have to tell us about that one, that's for sure. We're with Corey Falls, Jackson County Sheriff, on the Real Estate Show on the 4th of July of 2015. We'll be right back. Real Estate Show rolls on KMED this July the 4th of 2015. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you. We get together with you once a week here on KMED and talk about all sorts of things related to real estate. This is the beginning of our 6th year of doing this, which is every week. It's a lot of shows. We're approaching 300 of these shows, actually, if you can believe that. And have great listeners here at KMED. And, of course, you can watch all of our shows at realestateshowOregon.com or on YouTube as well, including today's show with Corey Falls, who's the Jackson County Sheriff and who is with us today here on the Real Estate Show, talking about marijuana, illegal marijuana, law enforcement, real estate, and all sorts of things. This segment goes really fast, so let me just ask you quickly, Corey, the issue of so you're actually saying that there's very little or not like it was in terms of the use of raping of our public lands and growing marijuana. It's not the case now. It's
not like it was a few years past when it was bad, and I think it's a combination of the movement of marijuana and it becoming legal and medical marijuana and then just the enforcement that was taken over the past several years. It's reduced. Because the enforcement is, I mean, I've seen news pictures. You guys fly in and find these grows on public land and take them out. And that discourages that. Well, that's good to hear that's not happening or that's less.
Are we going to get visits from the feds with those great big long backhoes that can...
Well, I mean, certainly
only if you have a big illegal grow now, because that's what it's going to be. That's why registering these... I mean, with the sheriff, I mean, whatever, it would be really smart to do.
It was getting out of hand there, even to get the federal attention to come and interdict that.
And we'll still do that if there's unlawful grows, we'll still enforce that.
And I agree with you that in terms of your office at enforcing the rules are going to be, I think one of the big issues is going to be is the use of water on people who are coming here and growing out on, say, they own some acreage, and the use of water, because you can only use so much well water and irrigation. If you don't have irrigation rights, or you only have so many rights, you just can't do what you want with it. I see that as being a problem that you may be dealing with, because it takes a lot of water to do. It takes a lot of water. We're in a drought,
little of that resource.
And we've got a lot of people growing, obviously moving here to do this.
Yeah, that is something that another thing that just another egg in the basket for this thing. There's several.
You got a big basket.
Yeah. I can't say this because we've talked a lot about just the enforcement side from the sheriff, and I know our county commissioners are working extremely hard on this topic also, and they're working to come up with some things also to help regulate, to help monitor, to help oversee this. So just for all county commissioners that are working for the best, for Jackson County citizens, they're every bit a part of this and working hard to help make it better.
And Joe, where does the county stand like this compared to like the city of Medford?
They've established some standards for safe distance from schools and parks and things like that for the county. And Kelly Madding's going to be on, and she worked very hard with the board on this issue. And believe me, hours of meetings and public testimony and input was put into this to try to kind of find a happy medium to meet the intent of the law, but to not then infringe or endanger or your communities or surrounding areas.
Well, where the rural properties are in our county, it's under Jackson County's jurisdiction, and so it falls under the sheriff and the whole bit.
But then there's those sections of Highway 99 between municipalities and places like that where it gets a little tricky there.
Nothing's ever just said or just easy, is it? Nothing's ever like a black or give me an answer.
That's right.
Nothing is. It makes it. I guess that's where you go. So really, Sheriff, you're really writing the rules here on this. I mean, your predecessors down the road after you're out of here, I mean, you're really setting the pace here for this.
I think we'll end up enforcing what we need to enforce. Actually, the county commissioners are probably more involved in writing the rules and some of the I guess the ordinances and what's going to move forward from there. But we're going to be handling a lot of the calls that come in and being part of the solution to try to help solve problems or help detract any.
Well, you're going to be busy, I think.
And just add that to taking over the department and moving it in the direction you want it to go, and just add that to your list.
It's on there.
You definitely got elected and got right to work on things.
Yeah. So what's gone well with you in your role? What do you like about the job?
Well, it's nice to get in there and just take a look around and see what we can improve on and what's been going well, what we need to continue to do. There's great people in the organization, and that's been nice because it's fun to go to work with them and solve problems. But the fun part is just putting things in place to have a professional law enforcement agency for Jackson County.
And what have your deputies said about the marijuana rules and all these things going on? I'm sure you talk about it in your meetings or whatever.
We do. Nobody's getting caught up too much in this too much.
Okay.
We get legal updates quite a bit. And so this is a new law that changes things a little bit. So I think most of the deputies are just tell us the rules and we'll go out and go to work.
So you really just want to know what the rules are. I think everybody wants to know how is the game going to be played.
Sure.
Law enforcement doesn't overstep its bounds. Right. You don't want to do that. I mean, look what's around the country in this. You don't want to do that.
And a huge part of the responsibility is on the citizens who voted for this law.
Sure.
To conduct themselves in a responsible way and to not burden our law enforcement with unnecessary calls or disputes with neighbors or things like that.
Well, I think that's where maybe the sheriff can really help and say, be responsible users. Don't make problems with this where they don't have to exist. If you just be resplay and don't be stupid, is really what it comes down to.
And be a good neighbor.
And be a good neighbor for your friends, and don't steal the water. Do it play within the rules. Because that way everybody comes out and the boat lifts for everybody, and it's less work and less stress and everything on the sheriff's department. You got more. I was going to say they probably have more important things to do than to worry about somebody who say, my neighbor is smoking here,
my neighbor stinks,
and my neighbor's place has an odor or whatever. I mean, I can just hear I can hear the 911 calls coming in right now, huh? You can see that? Anyway, we'll see what happened. Well, it's always good to have you here. If someone wants to get a hold of you, I mean, I know you're available and stuff, so can they just get a call you or phone you, or how can someone get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can call the sheriff's office. I try to call back all the messages that I get, reply to email, so pretty accessible. So, just contact me at the sheriff's office.
Yeah, so what do you do to keep cool, huh? You got a big air-conditioned office out there, like unlike KMED today?
Yeah, the air condition is working out there, so
all right.
That's nice.
That's a hot job, though. It's good to keep cool.
And it's good to know that the sheriff's department is there 24 hours a day, right? Yes. I mean, look at our friends in Josephine County, how different that is, and how in Jackson County and our rural properties and the patrols and the kind of things that go on, and what a great place it makes us. That's why people want to move here. Yeah. And we didn't even talk about when it becomes legal here, what the Californians who are going to invade this state for a while until it maybe changes in California. So we still have a lot of things that are going to go on. No question about that. Corey Falls, nice to visit with you. Thank you for coming.
Come back again. That'd be great to
absolutely
love
catch
to
up
have
with
you
again.
That'll do it for the Real Estate Show here on KMED, the 4th of July. For Pete and Joe, have a great week and God bless everybody.
You've been listening to The Real Estate Show on KMED AM and FM radio, presented by John L. Scott Real Estate of Southern Oregon, along with All Cities Property Management, the Home Builders Association of Jackson County, Ditech Mortgage, the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. For guest information or to watch a past show, visit us online at realestateshoworegon.com. Join us again next weekend for Southern Oregon's one and only Real Estate Show on KMED.